Condo prices crash in Toronto. Is there anywhere that you should buy a house in Canada in 2025? Hey there, welcome back. My name is Matthew Pfeifer, real estate agent in Regina, and that's my trusted assistant Matilda, and it's her 4th birthday today.
I just sent you this message to wish you happy birthday.
In this week's video, we're going through a forecast by TD, anticipating Toronto condo prices to continue to decline this year. We've also got an interesting report on what the median age for a first-time homebuyer in Ontario is. I put a poll out for that, so thank you for those of you that responded to that. Of course, we'll go through Matilda's question of the week and this week's best interest rates. And Moneysense has an article saying where you should buy a house in Canada in 2025. Speaking of where should you buy, well, I'm not in the business of telling you where you should buy. Unless you're looking to buy in Regina, then I'm going to tell you a few neighborhoods you should probably avoid. But if you're somewhere else in Canada and you don't have a great real estate agent, don't worry, I can handpick one for you from my great network of agents. If you want to book me in for a buyer's consultation, there's a link in the description of this video where you can do so. Condo prices in the GTA expected to drop another 10% this year, says TD Economics. Here's an exact quote from this article. Demand conditions have weakened materially. That would be an understatement, to say the least. As I was talking with real estate agents in Toronto for my monthly market update, one of them pointed out a really interesting fact that I will be talking about, and you're getting a sneak peek on it here, and that is that single-family home sales actually outpaced Toronto condo sales this month, and that basically hasn't happened in like 20, 30 years in Toronto. So here comes TD predicting that Toronto condo prices are going to decline 10% more this year, meaning that they would see about a 15 to 20% decline from where prices peaked about a year and a half ago, and that they are expecting that prices will rebound in 2026 though. With how many condos are completing right now in Toronto, I anticipate the market's going to be weak in 2026 as well. So of course the question is, why are prices declining? Well, a few of these are obvious. You have declining population growth in Canada and declining rents. I will be talking about this month's rent report right away here. Of course, affordability for first-time homebuyers still continues to be a problem. And for investors, well, the math just doesn't math out for these purchases anymore. And for most of these shoebox condos, investors were the primary purchasers. They also expect unemployment to continue to rise. TD is forecasting it to increase to about 7% this year. Who's buying, who's selling, and who's losing? What 2024 data reveals about Ontario's housing market? There was a whole bunch of really interesting nuggets of data in this article, and that's why I wanted to talk about it this week. First is that 65% of all transactions in Ontario last year were in Toronto. And last year was one of the slowest years on record for Toronto home sales. And 65% of all those sales in Toronto were condos. This year's numbers are going to be even worse. This next piece of information was one that I put up in a poll question for you guys, and thank you for those that answered it. I asked you, what was the median age for a first-time homebuyer in Ontario? Most of you answered it was 35 years old, but the correct answer was actually 40 years old. There was also some really good insight into those that own multiple properties. And this has been a really hot topic for quite a while. I've seen people saying that no one should be allowed to own more than one property. Philosophically, this is something I personally disagree with. I think that if somebody wants to buy multiple properties, they should be allowed to do so. But I understand not everybody sees that way, and a few of you are probably going to disagree with me in the comments section. What was interesting is that 55% of all these multiple property owners only had one additional property. So this is not the big bad investors buying up all the properties around you. This is somebody buying a cabin or a house for a relative, not the evil investors that everybody talks about. And actually, the number of investors that had 11 or more properties, I don't know why they picked 11, that actually declined. There's a ton of additional really good information in this article, so I'll link it in the description below so you can check it out yourself. Let's dive into this month's national rent report from rentals.ca. For the headline number, the average asking rent in Canada is still about $2,100 a month, a small month-over-month increase. That should be expected because it's spring. It was almost a 3% year-over-year decrease though, and I believe that's now 7 months in a row the year-over-year number has dropped. Let's take a quick look at some of the major cities in Canada and see what's happening with the average asking rent there. In Vancouver, it's down 5.5%. Toronto is down 5.1%. Halifax up 4.9%. Montreal down 3.6%, and Calgary down 10.4%. while Winnipeg is down 0.4%, Edmonton down almost 1%, and Regina down almost 2%. When I looked at these numbers, I said, hey, some of these, they don't seem to jive with kind of what I expected. So I phoned as many investors that own properties in these cities or real estate agents and said, hey, what are you seeing? And I gave them the numbers. For Toronto, Vancouver, they said, yeah, that basically lines up with what we're seeing. It was interesting though that in Edmonton, Montreal, and Winnipeg, all of those said, no, we're seeing rents increasing. Maybe in Montreal, you can make the argument that the downtown condo market's a little softer, but overall, they're seeing rents increasing year over year, not decreasing. And when it comes to Regina, everybody I talk to, whether they currently rent or they own investment properties, they're all saying that when it comes up for renewals at the end of leases, those are going higher, not lower. But I'm curious, what are you guys seeing? Are you seeing rents dropping or increasing where you live? Let me know in the comments.
What is title insurance and how does it work?
This was a question that a buyer of mine just asked recently, so I figured let's answer it. Title insurance will boil down to protecting any challenges to the ownership of your property or any sort of problems relating to the title of your property. Okay, and as the kids say these days, explain to me like I'm 5 what the heck that means.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Well, have you ever heard about someone pretending to own a property, putting it up for sale, and then being paid the proceeds of that sale, only for the owners to come home and find out somebody sold their property? Yeah, that actually happens. Title insurance would also protect you financially from this. It can also protect you from any encroachments that would be found from a new survey.
That turned into a property dispute.
So the township cut the building, leaving part of it standing on both sides of the property.
This is actually something that a friend of mine went through. They had a property surveyed for an addition they were putting on and found out that their neighbor's fence was about 5 feet on their property line. Boy, was the neighbor unhappy when they found out they were gonna have to move all their sprinklers, their gardens, their fence, and everything else in their backyard. Title insurance will also protect you from things like zoning non-compliance and a few other small things. The cost on title insurance is typically about $300, $400, $500. It varies based on price. It's a simple, easy thing to add to the purchase of your home that protects you from some potentially very expensive problems. Now let's get you into this week's best mortgage interest rates. Let's start off by taking a look at the best insurable mortgage interest rates. Radius still has the best 3-year at 3.99. That's unchanged. Marathon had this week's best 5-year fixed at 3.94. That's a slight increase from last week. Scotiabank had the best static variable at 4.25, unchanged. And Marathon had the best adjustable at 4.15, also unchanged. Now let's take a look at the best rates for uninsurable mortgages. Manulife has the best 3-year at 4.44, that's unchanged. They also had the best 5-year at 4.39, that's actually a slight drop. TD had the best static 5-year variable at 4.5%, that's a slight drop. And CMLS had the best adjustable at 4.55, that's actually an increase. Taking a look at the big 5 banks, their posted rates, not much changes, but as I said last week, if you are renewing, don't accept the first offer. Banks have been really hungry with renewals and giving you better rates than what they're posting and what I've been able to find so far. CIBC comes in first place at 3.99, Bank of Montreal in second place at 4.25, RBC in third place at 4.29, TD and fourth place at 4.39, and Scotiabank at 4.59%. That's a slight drop. So I was telling my wife the other day that she really should embrace her mistakes. So she turned around and gave me a hug. That one stings. Where to buy real estate in Canada in 2025. This is a ranking coming from Moneysense. They use a whole bunch of different factors to give a value score telling you which cities in Canada you should buy. So look at things like crime and median household income, property appreciation over the last couple of years, all these types of things, and then they give it a valuation score. Let's look at their top 5. In 5th place was Edmonton. Moncton came in at 4th place, St. John at 3rd, Calgary came in 2nd, and Fredericton was number 1. If you're an investor looking for property appreciation and rent increases, that's not how I would structure this order. Look at what's happened with Calgary. Not only has rent declined significantly year over year, but also home prices have actually started to drop a little bit. That's in my month market update. If you haven't watched that already, I'll put a link to that in the description below so you can check that out. In my 2025 predictions video, I said in this order, Edmonton, Saskatoon, and Montreal will see the largest year-over-year price increases. So far, Edmonton has seen home prices increase 10% year-over-year this year. Saskatoon is at 7%, and Montreal is at 8%. But none of those cities have seen the largest year-over-year price increases so far this year. Winnipeg is quietly making a case for itself with prices up 8% year-over-year. but Quebec City has seen prices increase almost 20% in just 1 year. That's up over $100,000 so far. Now, if you were making a list, the top 5 cities in Canada 2025 that you should buy real estate, which ones would they be and what order? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm really curious to see what you guys come up with.